Hello there again. This is Professor York, and this is part 3 of Tips for Great Presentations. And what we're going to be focusing in on are presenting and closing tips. These are our areas of focus. So let's sort of launch into presenting because I've talked about more of the strategic and tactical pieces, but not actual things about presenting. So I'm going to cover that and then get into closing, which is part of presenting because it's how you put an exclamation point in your presentation with what is most memorable that is there. So how about giving a presentation? So I have a few thoughts that might be helpful as you all think about it. And these are thoughts that I was stimulated by the presentations I just saw over the last few weeks by our students. And there were some things as I'm rating them on this rubric that I thought, let's just go through on a global basis some things that might be taken in and help to move the bar a little bit and help, I think, you as a presenter be that much better, since it is really one of the most important skill sets that you'll have in a consulting or corporate or even an entrepreneurial career. So, handling nerves. Yes, this is very important that we need to keep in mind. Everybody gets nervous, okay? Folks think that doing a presentation is probably worse than death itself, okay? And so you have to think about how do you handle nerves that's there. So I'm going to sort of go to some of my friends who I know in the SEAL family as well as in the Marines, and it's called box breathing. So breathe from your diaphragm. So one of the ways of controlling nervous energy is breathing. And as you see on the left hand side there, that's quiet kit. It's 4 seconds, and then 4 seconds to exhale. Okay, so think about that. The deep breath in and then the out. All right, so that I think is one way that's been proven time and again in terms of studies that definitely helps in terms of starting to control basically some of the nervous energy that is there. The second is establishing a stable base, and you're looking at this, and this is from karate, but I know several folks who are martial art experts, and they talk about this, what we call a horse stance, but basically establish a good base. So if you have that and you have your diaphragm, this all now starts to center your energy, and this is what you have to think about, is centering energy rather than energy taking control of you, that nervous energy. Channel that energy, and the horse stance is one way to be able to do it. Project your voice. This is something I try to do a lot, and I know Oprah does very, very well. And the point is that at the end of the day is that take that energy from that diaphragm internally and get it out. So you'll see sometimes when I'm on platform, I come out like I am literally loud and I am like the game show host, but what I'm doing is I'm taking that internal energy and I'm letting it go. And once I get through that release of energy, it allows me not only to engage that audience, but I've just released a lot of nervous energy that allows me to focus and settle and really give a good presentation. So as you're working with your presentation, okay, you need to do what the guy on the left-hand side is doing, which is looking at your audience. And this is something I noticed in almost every single presentation presenter, was the inability to fully focus in on that audience. And a lot of folks either looking at slides a lot or notes. And when you do a major presentation, you shouldn't be using those crutches that are there. Okay, and as you can see, the individual who is caught on the right-hand side into the minute detail, the audience is turned off. So if you do need a crutch, what you do is use a monitor, or you could put your laptop in front and turn it around. I do that sometimes. You notice I have a 25-foot HDMI extender cord. I do that for advisory boards, so basically I can be able to flip around my laptop, put it away for myself and my presenters so that they don't have to feel like they have to look back at the slide when reality what they should be doing is looking at the audience. I go into the audience a lot because I want to make sure I'm engaging, I'm looking, I'm checking, I'm trying to make sure we're working together. And that's a key point, is engagement of the audience. And that's why you see like the gentleman on the left-hand side who has now gone into the audience. Or you may have seen where I'll have an exercise, like get up and stretch and do something. Okay, or audience participation. That's where posing questions, a very Socratic oriented style, can be able to be incorporated very just subtly. It doesn't have to be all the time, but it's a very useful technique to bring and connect with your audience. When you do small group with your clients, such as in your final presentation or in your midterm presentation, you want to make sure that there are questions that are embedded throughout so that your client is engaged, your audience is engaged versus tuning out. Because you want to make it a conversation. The best presentations, believe it or not, are a conversation, and you're able to go back and forth and play with that conversation. In fact, Robert Solomon from The Art of Client Service talks about, some of the best presentations are when they get into conversation and they move off the whole script of the slides and they work with what the back and forth is with the client is. That's one of the reasons why whiteboards, flip charts are very useful, and also is flipping your deck into what we call screen share. And that's one of the things that PowerPoint does allow, is if you're projecting out, you can set it up so that your laptop gives you presenter view and you can flip into basically screen share. And I've done this in advisory boards where it's sort of gone a little off the reservation. I flip it into the screen share and then I can start picking and moving around slides, and it's looking professional. Body language, very, very critical. Those who have closed body language, okay, this knee, like this or like this, okay, looking down, this type of stuff really sends very, very, very poor messages to your audience. So you need to think about the language that you have, like the gentleman in the middle, hostile attitude. Ooh. And I can see that sometimes. You can see it in an audience picking up just this, I'm cool, or whatever. And you have to be aware. Or the closed arms. And I remember a student, and my wife occasionally does this. She'll have her arms like this, and you got to think about that. And with one student, we were doing a coaching session. And I says, you don't buy what I'm pitching. And she says, I do. I says, well, I can tell from your body language. Wow. And it's like, because boom, the arms are like this and like that. So you need to understand. So when people are open and they lean in, okay, they're engaged. So we had a Japanese team last quarter that pitched to the dean of this College of Pharmacy over at Rutgers University, and they pitched very, very interesting cardiovascular value propositions. And I knew they sold them when the dean just went in like this, and then the dean started making comments and questions, and that's what you know when you have sold. So these are some things to think about relative to body language, and to read when people are not with you or with you. But also on the other side is yourself. Are you open? Are you engaging? Are you using gestures? Okay. Not necessarily like some politicians who are like, oh, up and down, and this and like that. There's one or two politicians I've seen that, and it's just a little too distracting. But being able to use controlled body gestures to release energy, one, to engage the audience, to point out points that are on your slide that you want, to encourage interaction from the group that you are speaking with. So very critical. And your eyes are most critical as well. How you use your eyes and looking at your audience is very critical. And also, pause and smile. Okay? And as Mark Twain says, the right word may be effective, but no word was ever effective as a rightly timed pause. And we call that the pregnant pause. Sometimes you're in negotiation, you just lay out a question. And it is, people don't like that pregnant pause. and somebody responds. And in negotiations, they talk about the he or she who speaks first loses that negotiation. So it's a very important thing. Smiling. I can't believe Steve Jobs, we got him in a smile, which is really great. I guess, with all the great things that he's done and the money that he made, yeah, I think he could smile. But I love the classic entrepreneur, Richard Branson, he says it's a competitive advantage. And you just think about it. We championed Richard Branson. I remember a presentation where we championed him as the champion of customer service. And he was the central character of the presentation that we had for the Moffitt Cancer Center. And you being able to smile and engage and being happy translates that energy to your audience, and your audience smiles back. It's hard not to. So it shows, I think, a real effective way to be able to engage not only with your physical gestures, but with your face and your eyes. And then laser pointers. Okay, they're not for shooting at airplanes, but what they are for, as we do know, is actually to use to point out on the slides. And I do point that in the rubric, then people don't use, and they use their hands to point it there. We have a laser pointer and a remote. And here's a Logitech, which is what I use. Remember, forward is going to be the button on the right side, and the back is going to be the one on the left side, sort of like how slides go. And there's a green button there that allows you to use a laser, and then there are buttons on the bottom, one which allows you to black the screen. So if you just want to make it pure Q&A, you can do that as well. So use these tools. It'll help you a whole lot in terms of, just from a professionalism standpoint. And I just see when folks they're not comfortable using these tools, it becomes a distraction to the audience. And probably one of the other key points that I brought up in section 1, which is 1 point per slide, but I keep on saying, punch home that point. Make 1 point per slide. I see some folks that just overload it. So punch home your points. And last but not least is practice beforehand. Okay? Take your phone or get Screencast-O-Matic and videotape yourself. And the quality of your talk will go up and better and better and better. And I think this is one of the areas that gets overlooked so much by so many teams, because they're just so much time is just put into the slides and argument. What's this best slide and what are we doing, etc., that haven't thought about telling the story effectively. And I think that being able to practice your part well and practice your handoffs, remember, it's not just the content, but it is also how you deliver. And one of the teams that we saw on the 20th in the second set of final presentations did a real spectacular job in terms of that. And it was just, almost theatrical in many ways in terms of how well things were orchestrated. But that reflects practice. And when you practice well, means at the end of the day, you're going to present and execute that much better. I will share a little story in that I was asked 3 weeks before a graduation of the postdoc fellowship program at Rutgers, which I was an alumni of, to give the keynote talk. Oh, great. What do you want? Well, anything, 20, 25 minutes. So like, okay, well, do I have slides, not slides? No. So I had to write the presentation. And then what I did for literally, I would say every night from basically after dinner, I do once or twice, 20, 25 minutes, I do presentation like I'm doing here on Screencast-O-Matic with that talk. So when I did come into doing that talk, of course we would have nerves, but I was able to get those nerves quickly, get into the talk, make a really engaging talk, make it a lot of fun. And it was a successful talk, and I think that was to over 350 people that are there. So I think that is something that I would advocate more than anything else, is just practice. So let's just sort of bring to closing here in terms of closing up your presentations in terms of this. This is something that I just find folks just lose. They just don't realize in the pitch that you have to close. And, as Alec Baldwin and Glenn Ross said, ABC, always be closing. And I think an effective close really allows you to reiterate a key point that you want folks to leave with, or an ask that is there, which is very critical in the sales and marketing place. You need to think about a call to action. So how do you wrap up a presentation? Oh, it's like, okay, we're done with last slides. Great. So you got, no. Or I love those slides that, well, here's our 5 bullet points that we want to summarize. And, oh, by the way, we have another slide. I mean, I've worked with clients that you'd have basically 2 slides that are your conclusion slides. I'm like going, yeah, so what was your bottom line? You just sort of reiterated what your talk was, and you could have actually used those 2 slides as your talk. Well, wrapping up presentation should be banging home a point. So bang home a point with a singular take-home or ask. For instance, we had here for the Moffitt Cancer Center, we were doing a presentation, and we wanted to emphasize from good to great about the hedgehog concept, and that you should focus on what your core is and what you are the best in the world at doing, which was research. Or another memorable close might be, make the journey a success. Do you want it to be ordinary or extraordinary? And this was, I think, in my consultant's toolkit presentation. That's there. So there's the ordinary, there's the extraordinary, and put a choice. What would you choose to do? I use the boys in the boat example as a very, very good example of a journey that was a very arduous journey, but was a successful one. Or I love the classic Arnie, okay? Be dynamic. I use this actually in my closing of a SEO presentation that we did. And he said, everything you do, every decision you make either takes you one step closer or one step further away from your goal. You either grow or regress, but nothing stands still. My bottom line point is you always have to be learning and growing and improving. And look, and Arnie is the greatest epitome of a person who has consistently reinvented himself and improved himself and take from $20 in his pocket to, at the end of the day, being a very successful business person, entrepreneur, movie star, bodybuilding champion. He actually was the governor of the state of California. So, you know, that's something that really helps to bring home that bottom line point, and especially when I was trying to talk about something as complicated as SEO and how important it is to website, creating good websites and website traffic. Or here's a simple one with a call to action. So are you ready to rip? So, you know, that's sort of what I wanted to leave with you, is those points that were there in terms of presenting, which are so critical, but also for being able to close out a presentation. Thanks much for your attention on this series. If you have questions, email me or bring it up in class. I look forward to seeing your great presentations in the future. This has been enjoyable for me to be able to put together this short video series.